In today's video, we are going to study a game played between Garry Kasparov and Nigel Short in Chess Championship match 1993. This game was played in Ruy Lopez, and in this game, Nigel Short uh, grabbed a pawn actually, and then paid dearly for that. Garry Kasparov became the world champion in 1985. E4, controlling the center and preparing to develop the bishop on f1. As I told you that I am going to do a series where I am going to explain the moves move by move. E5, knight f3, developing a piece and attacking the pawn on e5. Now knight c6, developing and protecting the pawn, and bishop b5. And this is the start of the Ruy Lopez. The point of this move is that defender of the pawn is attacked, which is knight c3. a6 by black. This actually gives blacks the freedom to play b5 when needed, and white cannot win the pawn uh, over here if he plays the move, for example, bishop into knight, d into c6, knight into e5, and now the queen to d4, and this knight and this pawn both are threatened. That's why you can't win a pawn in this position. So after a6, white played the move bishop a4. Now knight f6. Black is attacking the pawn on e4 now. Castle by white. This move is also playable. Knight into e5. Sorry, but black. The point is that black should not strive to hold onto the pawn. Sorry, I am making a mistake. After knight f6, now castle. In this position, sorry, black can take this pawn. For example, if he takes it, knight into e4. Now after rook e1, now the move is knight c5, threatening the bishop over here. Bishop into c6, d into c6, and now white can play the move knight into e5. This may be the course of the game, and where bishop black would play the bishop over here on e6, because after this knight moves, this rook is going to give the check to the king. This might be the sequence of the moves, but here in the game, bishop e7 was played. Now the e file is being blocked. Now this pawn can be taken for free. So that's why white defends it by playing the move rook e1. Now b5 by black, bishop to b3, and now castle. In this position, usually black goes for this structure d6, and after white plays the move h3, preventing black bishop to coming over here. Then black goes for castle. This is another sequence. But in the game, Nigel Short directly went for the castle. After that, a4. And the point of this a4 move is actually the anti-martial. This is called the anti-martial line. Because if white, for example, over here, white does not play the move, any move he plays like a3, then black can immediately hit in the center. And this is called the Marshall Gambit. And nowadays, people usually try heavily to avoid with white the Marshall Gambit, because roundabout the theory is too much developed in Marshall Gambit that blacks hold a draw. That's why even in the recent World Championship match, You have seen that Magnus Carlsen avoided the martial gambit by whether playing the move a4 or whether playing the move h3. These two moves both avoids the martial gambit. So bishop b7 by black protecting the rook, d3 by white, d6, knight bd2 developing the knight, knight d7. The point of moving the knight over here is that this knight is now coming over here on c5. The reason behind is that, and in future at some time black would play his king to h8 and then he would try to open up this side of the board by playing the move f5. c3. The point of playing the move c3 is that it is supporting the center when white is going to play the move d4, and it is holding also white's knight from coming over here on d4. In after the move knight c5 was played by black, it was attacking the bishop over here. So first a into b5. Now, if example, black goes for taking the bishop, then after queen into knight, a b5, and now rook into a8. Sorry, rook into 8, bishop into rook, and queen into b5, winning the pawn. That's why you don't play the move knight into bishop immediately, because you loses this pawn over here on b5. That is the reason. So a into b5 by black. Now rook into 8, bishop into 8, and bishop c2. At first glance, this bishop looks awkward over here on c2, as it is doing nothing, just protecting the pawns, babysitting the pawns. But in the course of the game, white would try to play the move b4 and then again would bring his bishop over here on b3, which would be eyeing this diagonal and hitting this pawn over here on f7. Bishop f6 by black. The point of this bishop f6 move is now black is preventing this move d4. You can't play this move d4. Now b4, knight e6 by black, knight f1 by white. The reason of moving this move knight f1 is that it is coming to f5. Sorry, it is coming to f5 to e3 or to g3. The point is that, and now this bishop is better. His diagonal is free. So bishop b7 by black. Now knight e3, going for the idea, and now g6. Black does not want the white knight over here on f5, as it would be very strong. That's why he played the move g6. But it has also weakened the backside of this drawback of this move g6 is that it has also weakened the king side. Bishop b3. Now you see that bishop has become once again active. Bishop g7 by black and h4. The point of this move h4 is that white is trying to open up the king side to some extent. So bishop c8 was played by black. It is indirectly controlling this diagonal for this king side. The point of this move is that h5 by white. By playing the move h5, white is trying to remove black's protective shield of pawns, which he has in front of his king. This is the concept behind it. The move h5. King, sorry, king h8 by black, and now the move is knight d5 by white. And this knight is very well placed over here. It is eyeing very good squares in black's territory. And g5, as this move g5 avoids exchanging pawns, but now black king side has become very weak, and especially this square f5. So Knight comes back because now this square is very good for this knight instead of this square over here on d5. Knight f4 by black. The reason behind playing this knight to f4 was that whenever white is going to play the move knight f5, black is going to grab it because this knight over here on f5 would be very strong. And the second reason for playing the move knight to f4 was that it is now hitting this pawn over here on h5. g3 by white. The point of this move g3 and not protecting this pawn over here on h5 is that white wants to bring his king over here, king to g2. Then he's going to bring his rook over here on h1, and he's going to attack the black king. And whenever this knight would move from over here, this queen will come into the game. So that's why Garry Kasparov made the move g3 over here and did not protected this pawn. So knight into h5, black grabbed the pawn, knight f5, bishop into f5. As the knight was very strong, that's why bishop took the knight, e into f5. Now if black tries to protect this pawn by playing the move, for example h6, now it is a blunder because after knight into g5, black's this knight is hanging over here. That's why black can't protect this pawn over here on g5. So he played the move queen d7, hitting f5 pawn. Now bishop into g5. Now I want you people to pause the video and think that what happens if black takes this pawn f5 immediately. Okay, you have understood the consequences that if black goes 4 into queen into f5 immediately, now the move is bishop g5. And after that, this bishop is coming over here. And after king is going to move to g2 and rook to h1. And white has a very ferocious attack on the black king side. That's why, due to this reason, after bishop into g5, he played the move h6 instead. Instead, instead of this h6 move, bishop to f6 was better, or black would have gone for this knight f6 move. This was also better for black. But he played the move h6 and now the move knight h4. This knight over here on h5 is being threatened. So knight f6, bishop into f6, bishop into f6, queen h5. The point of bringing the queen down, now this pawn is threatened. King to h7, now knight c2. The point of bringing the knight over here is that knight is going to reroute over here on e3 to g4 and threaten this pawn heavily. More pressure on this pawn, and after that white can just go for king g2 and bring his rook over here on h1. This is the concept of playing the move knight to g2. So in this position, black defended by playing the move to knight e7. Now his knight is coming over here on g8, protecting this pawn over here. Knight e3 by white, he is going with his plan. Knight g8, d4 by white. And I want you people to pause the video and think that what actually is the concept of playing the move d4 by Garry Kasparov in this position. I hope you have understood that after the moves e into d4, which was played in the game, and c into d4, this diagonal is opened for white. And if white is able to exchange this bishop and he could be able to move this pawn over here to f6, and his bishop is on c2, it will come with check to king and black would just lose the game. Bishop into d4 was played by Nigel Short, and that's why I said in the start of the game that Nigel Short lost the game by becoming greedy. Now, black's position falls very quickly because knight g4 threatening over here. This pawn. King moved to g7, and now knight into h6 by white. So let's see how many defenses white has in this position. Because white is threatening to play the move f6, and he is going to give the check over here on bishop c2. If black tries the move, for example f6, then still you are going to play the move knight into h6. After knight into knight, now queen g6 check. After king h8, now queen into h6 check. Queen has to defend, for example, and it is going to be a mate. So in this position, after knight g4, f6 does not work. So we are going to check that does this work? Bishop g7, still it does not work because you are going to play the move f6 either way. After bishop into f6, now the move is queen into h6. Check. The point of this move is that if knight takes the queen, now knight into f6 check, and you have win the piece. So that's why king g7 was played in the game, but still it is being lost because Garry Kasparov went for knight into h6. And I want you people to pause and think that is it possible that you can take this knight with this knight over here on g8, which was played in the game. The point, black played the move bishop f6 over here. Why can't we take this pawn, knight? Because if you take it now, first queen g5 check, king move to h7, now bishop c2. I am going to move this pawn over here to f6 and would be a check, and then I am going to take this knight and it would be a checkmate. The only defense over here is that you are going to give your piece in exchange after queen into f6. Now the move is rook g8, and still rook g6. It pawn in the position because now, for example, if you take this pawn, now you are going to lose the queen because of this check. So after knight into h6, black tried the move bishop f6, but it also fails because now Garry Kasparov finishes the game with a very beautiful move. I want you people to pause the video and think that what is that move. I hope you have judged, and that is bishop into f7. And black resigned. In this position, Nigel Short resigned the game. The point is that if rook into f7, now queen g3 check. Sorry, g6 check. After king h8, now queen into g8, it is a mate. And if black tries, like, for example, bishop e3 in this position, now first bishop into g8. If you take it, now still it is a mate because king h8 and king into rook mate. So due to this reason, at this position, when Garry took the pawn on f7, Nigel Short resigned the game. So this was the end of the video. If you like it, kindly subscribe and hit the bell icon button. Thank you very much.